Hello and welcome to the Browns Blitz, this very special first video version of the podcast and episode number 288. We've been doing this a long time, the first video version, so we're pretty excited about that. Today's Thursday, March 27th, and I'm going to bring my brother Jeff in. Hey,
Wow.
Jeff, how are things going?
Hey, great, Rod. This is high tech here, huh?
It is high tech.
It took 288 episodes to see our ugly faces.
Yeah.
Hey, before we go any further, I want to do a PSA for everybody that's used to listening to the podcast, just audio. We want you to practice safe podcast listening. So no watching the video while you're driving, Jeremy.
Good. Yeah. Good idea, Jeff. Yeah. that one's just for Jeremy. All right.
Just for Jeremy. That's right.
Just for Jeremy. All right. Well, Jeff, what do you say we bring our guest in?
Let's do it.
All right. We're going to bring in John Draft Vogel. You can follow him at Draft Vogel. Hey, John, how are you tonight?
Hey, guys. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So, John, you're an independent scouting consultant and NFL draft analyst. Can people find your work anywhere other than on your Twitter account at Draft Vogel, or is that where everybody should go to check out your stuff?
That's the best way to keep up with me, with all the shows, the different things that we do. But draftvogel.com, if you're not an X user, is probably your best bet. You can also get access into my draft guide. It's complex. Right now, we're about 1,500 prospects deep into this class. We've got team breakdowns for every NFL team, so you can kind of see the matchmaking process and what teams are kind of looking for. So that's pretty much where the bulk of my work goes into. It's what agents use. It's what personnel departments use. It's a beast in itself.
Actually, you have that pinned on your site, don't you? That draft guide, is that available now?
Yeah, so the 25 is up, and it's we're getting all the pro day data in there, keeping up with the NFL free agent period, so the rosters are up to date. And then it's also a little bit of the 26 guide. So basically, agents are already looking at next year, so you got to stay a year ahead. So the 26 guide, the guide for next year is already pretty much in the works, and it's available. It's a live interactive guide. It's through OneNote on Microsoft Office. And so you can watch it expand and grow throughout the entire year.
Yeah, so I thought it might be cool if you maybe just give us just a little bit of info on your background or how you got started into scouting and following the draft and putting a guide out like this.
Yeah, so essentially what kind of happened was I think I hit 20, 21 years old, and I realized that I needed to do something with football with my life. Otherwise, I was going to be unhappy most of it. And so media seemed to be the best option that I had. So I started covering the NFL and a bunch of other different sports. Came around to the draft process and absolutely fell in love with it. Just evaluating players, projecting. It's almost like I kind of tell people scouting is it's a little bit different than coaching. It has a very similar reward from it. Scouting is essentially you saw the guy before anybody else knew that he was there, and you believed in him before anybody else did, and then he explodes, and you're the proud big brother that's watching, right? Or the proud coach. You're just the evaluator. Coaching is very similar like that, where at the end of the year, you work with a high school kid. It doesn't matter if he's in high school, middle school, college, NFL. You work with him, you teach him some things, and you watch him implement that during a game, and you realize he took everything that we taught him. He excelled. He made it. And it's proud watching at the end of the year as a coach, seeing what the results were of your work, not just yours, but his too. So scouting, that's really what I fell in love with scouting, is finding these guys, the diamonds in the rough, and trying to be as accurate as possible with my projection. So I got into independent consulting back in 2021. Essentially, a lot of agents got into the space and were contacting people like me that were just draft nerds, posting on Twitter all the time for advice and information. And it expanded into a network. So now, there's several agencies that purchase the guide every year since I've started putting it out for the guide is essentially was just my notes. Before I published my scouting reports, I put it in one place, and it kind of involved this idea of, well, I could just sell access into the guide, and then people could see it, and then it kind of condensed everything that I do into one place.
Yeah, well, that's cool. That's really cool. So we're going to get into the draft and kind of ready to pick your brain, because right now there's a whole lot of stuff floating around out there, and I know it's kind of silly season. We'll get your thoughts on what clarity you think might be out there right now. But yeah, looking forward to talking some of that. But before we do that, we have a little segment we call Blitz Beverages on our show. And John, you're the guest. You get to talk about what you're drinking first.
Well, I don't normally do this, so it was quite a surprise when I found out that we do this segment.
About 5 minutes ago, right?
5 minutes ago, yeah. And I had it set off to the side. I just happened to, okay, I'm going to get into this when we get done. It's the cognac rum. It's a special edition. It's a Doucet. It's 80 proof. Fancy little bottle. That's really the reason I got it. That's what I'm going with tonight.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Excellent. All right, Jeff, you have I understand a label purchase that you're gonna.
Yeah, so I actually talked about this one a few weeks ago, Rod. That I picked this up at the grocery store because I liked how the label looked. This is a Go Sunshine State Tropical IPA with mango and peach, and really this is like a hot summer day beer, but it's actually a non-alcohol beer. But I wanted everyone to see the label here, so maybe you can understand why I bought it. It's kind of got this cool lizard-looking dude on the front of it.
Nice.
So anyway, that's about as exciting as that gets.
Okay. Maybe after you have a sip of it, you can tell us what you think of it too.
And I'm not going to shoot it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's very, very citrusy, a little lockjaw-y almost. But like I said, probably be real good on a hot day.
That's the first sip, though. It'll calm down for you.
Yeah,
it'll get better. So I'm pulled out one of the Arche Summer Classics, the Salted Key Lime New England IPA. I've got one or two of these left.
Nice.
So it's when I bought a bunch of these when they were closing down. So just still working my way through and enjoying every one of them. So that's gonna take care of our Blitz beverages, guys. So let's get back to some
Blitz beverages.
Talk. What's that?
Our first video Blitz beverages.
Yeah, so people can actually see the cans, the bottles, everything. It's pretty cool. They can see that we're actually drinking the stuff and not just, talking about it. So, so John, there's so many ways we could go. I guess it's probably just good to maybe just get your thoughts on an overview of the draft class. I guess strengths and weaknesses is probably pretty obvious, but how do you see this draft class as far as how it might differentiate from some others?
Yeah, so I think a couple notes to start out with. It's not a top heavy draft class. Is what we're used to seeing. We usually see 20, 25 guys that we have a really good idea are going to go first round for sure. And this year, that number's closer to 15. So once you kind of get in the back end of the first round, it's going to be absolute chaos, almost unpredictable. I think you'll see a lot of movement, people making some trades, putting some value into the future drafts. I think you'll see that a little bit. I think you'll see people moving back up into the first round, some people looking to come out of it. And then I think you'll see when the top 10, 15, how that shakes out. It's really going to depend on how many quarterbacks go. that's where some of these guys will get pushed down to the middle, the first round. Uh, Perhaps your best players aren't going to come off the board first, because quarterback needs and really the best players of this class are not guys that you typically prioritize being drafted early, outside of maybe Abdul Carter. Um, I think the other thing too is once you get into that second, third, fourth, even into the fifth round range, there's a ton of guys that are going to be impact players. So there's depth in this class. But that tier that we usually see go in day two is very large. That's going to be there's going to be a lot of movement day two and into the beginning of day three as well. People moving up, trying to secure their guy that they really like before he comes off the board. Um, I would expect it to be a really fun draft to watch. Don't be writing anything in pen yet, especially those picks. Who's picking at those certain spots because they're going to be changing a lot.
Yeah, interesting. John, with those first 15 obviously being premium picks now, premium players, how do you think that impacts those trades that you're talking about, the trade downs and so forth? Obviously, don't you feel like teams are going to have to give up more to get one of those top 15 picks than they typically would?
Yeah, I think you've seen that with the way that the Giants and Titans trade talks had broken down. Um, that really came down to the number of first round picks that the Giants were willing to move. The Titans were asking for two initially. The Giants were trying to counter it. They were trying to involve Harold Landry into it somehow. That didn't happen. Um, but that's just the nature of trade talks, right? You're talking with people, you're exchanging information, you're seeing what that team is kind of thinking and how they're feeling. Well, now that it's going to take 3 first round picks to move up to that spot, and I don't think that the Giants are going to be willing to move that. So yes, there is a premium, especially if somebody is sitting there in the spot and they know that Travis Hunter's still on the. Let's say Travis Hunter gets to 5 in your Jacksonville. And maybe corner is not your greatest need. It's one you could absolutely use, but maybe you want to prioritize other positions and you see the opportunity for someone to move up and take him, and you go down 4 or 5 spots. That's a very likely possibility. Um, I think that, yes, there is a little bit more value in those top guys. So if there is a move down, it's going to take a little bit more to move. So that's why I think the first part of that first round stays pretty solid, because the teams that are picking there understand the value of those guys compared to the rest of the class.
It almost becomes cost prohibitive to go and get one of those picks, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You mentioned Travis Hunter. He's very interesting, and nobody knows what's going to happen in Cleveland right now. I don't think. We're hearing a different rumor almost every hour as to what's going to happen either with the quarterback or in the draft. I'm just kind of curious where you rank Travis Hunter as a receiver and then as a corner in this class.
Yeah, I think he's going to play corner, and then he's the number 1 corner because he can play match coverage. Most of the league that you see, the schemes are trending match coverage. It's the easiest thing to install. It's a lot easier for players to play, especially when they have zone and man capability. And it's a lot easier on the safeties as well, and the linebackers. They can be a little bit more effective in match coverage. So match is really the prevailing scheme, and he's the best match corner in this class. He can play zone. He's pretty darn effective at man. He's not a physical guy. He's not going to get, hands on you. He's going to play a lot of trail technique. But he's definitely a guy that he's the best corner in the class because of the athletic ability he brings, the amount of different assignments that he can play. And then when you kind of get over to the wide receiver side, if he was a wide receiver, we'd probably be talking about him in the top 5 wide receivers. So that naturally leads to the question, okay, well, is he going to play both ways? He played both ways at Colorado. They're going to be snapping the ball a whole lot less in the NFL than they were at Colorado, where he's playing 120 snaps a game. I think that you'll see him probably play full-time corner, part-time receiver, but that's going to depend on the landing spot and just how creative the offensive coordinator wants to be with him.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, yeah, I mean the whole thing with the Browns, and I really get the feeling that the Browns are probably still weighing their options, still exploring possibilities at 2 and at the quarterback position. Um, I was just thinking about with the Browns, we've kind of got 3 scenarios, as far as the number 2 selection, and that's not 3 ways to pick. It's what makes sense for the team, what we expect the team to do, and what we've seen the team do historically. And they're 3 completely different things.
Right.
So if you guys want to throw your opinions out for those 3 different things, if you're just looking at it from the sense of taking the best player or the best need and filling the most positions with the draft capital, versus what we would expect the average team to do versus what I don't want to sound like the negative Browns fan, but what people expect Browns to do to mess things up.
I think let me add a wrinkle to that too, Rod, that historically speaking, through various regimes, and then what the history of the current regime is, right?
Yeah, you can't just lump it all together either.
Yeah. So fan expectation is currently based a lot on what's happened over the last 25 years.
Yeah. We look at every quarterback that's been picked since 1999, and and obviously those weren't all picked by this regime.
Right. And they all stunk. They were all terrible picks.
Yeah, pretty much.
I would say the expectation is probably that Shador Sanders comes off the board at 2, right? A lot of teams are preparing for that. Cam Ward's going number 1. It doesn't matter who's going to be picking there, whether it's the Titans, the Giants, whether the Titans move up or move down with somebody like the Jets. Cam Ward's coming off the board there.
Yeah.
And so 2 kind of puts you in a spot where do they take Shador? Now we know they got interest. Obviously, he came in on a 30 visit. Pretty clear they probably talked to him at the combine as well, because he was kind of limiting the teams that he was talking to in the top 5. We also know that Tyler Shuck out of Louisville came in on a 30 visit as well. And that kind of gives you an idea that, okay, well, maybe they are considering not going quarterback in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Shador is, I think if we didn't attach Sanders to his name, we'd be talking about him as a 2nd, 3rd, maybe 4th round quarterback. That's what the tape kind of tells us, that he's got a good, not great arm. He's a capable processor, tends to hold on to the ball a little bit too long. And a lot of people want to point to the offensive line issues that he had at Colorado as kind of the issue to why, he wasn't as productive or why he got sacked as much. But the real issue is he holds on to the ball a little too long. He's a little slow sometimes to get it out, especially in the quick game. Those are things that hopefully you could fix, right? Now, the arm talent, you're not going to change that. He's about where he's at. His max effective range is probably right there, somewhere between 40 and 50 yards, which is average for the NFL. That's a little bit concerning. Not as concerning if you're running a West Coast offense, kind of the Stefanski type scheme. But, it is concerning. It's going to limit you a little bit. The other thing that came out of the combine with Shador was just the way that he kind of interviewed, the way that he came across with teams, which is, he's had the same coach his entire career. There's a certain way that they install things. There's a certain way that they read things. And he hasn't really been exposed to anything different than that. So that's a little bit of a concern as well. It's really his first time away from home in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You might not want to throw him into the NFL, you're the head of an organization right away. I think that's something on a lot of character reports. But there is some upside there just because, all right, well, if we fix the feet, we get his internal clock adjusted properly, he could be a really good game managing quarterback for us. I personally wouldn't do it. I wouldn't want to take him that high and that's just because my eyes tell me that he's not quite ready yet. There's not really a quarterback that I like in this class, and so it's a really bad year to be trying to take a quarterback anyways. And so I might try to go, well, we just locked up Myles Garrett for a long time. Abdul Carter is very tempting to be coming off the other side. He's got some flexibility as well that you can kind of mix and match him on that front seven. Move JOK around a little bit and try to open him up for some more opportunities. So there would be some schematic versatility there that I think would be very valuable. And then the last option is really Hunter. Do you go ahead and take the guy? Is he going to be that corner number one for you? Is he going to really kind of hold up the secondary and bring that final piece so that Myles Garrett gets home a little bit more often? That's a great question. He could be that guy. So, there's a lot of different ways. There's 3 ways that this thing goes. I think the expectation across the league, though, is that Shedeur comes off the board there.
So just circling back to fan expectations, John, I think Cleveland fans would expect Shedeur, taken with the second pick overall, to win 10 games his first season.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And to play week 1 or week 3. Yeah.
So, how do you manage that? How do you, as an organization, say, okay, we're gonna take this guy, even though we know that he needs to sit for a while. He needs some seasoning. We probably don't want to play him his first year if possible. All right, and then try to manage the fan expectations of doing what's best for the player at the same time. So can an organization like Cleveland pull that off, or is the much safer route to go take a player that is going to perform his first year and you're that high?
I think that there's a couple factors that are being played into it, and number one would be Kevin Stefanski and his hot seat. I think it's pretty common knowledge across the league that if he doesn't get this team straightened out this year, he's probably not coaching here next year. That also puts some implications on the general manager, Andrew Berry. What will his job status look like at the end of the year? That's where you start to get desperation, to kick into some of these decisions that are made. Yeah. One of the easiest fixes to kind of extend your career, a lot of the times, it's not as often anymore as it used to be, but traditionally it's been go draft a young quarterback that shows you some promise. Yeah. That's one way to do it. A quarterback is also, you need one. If you're going to be successful in this league, you have to have a starting franchise quarterback. There are not many teams that have been able to go very far. It's been a long time, really, since anybody's gone very far throughout a whole season without a franchise quarterback. I think you really have to go back to Trent Dilfer and the Ravens. Right. Is the last time a guy that wasn't a franchise quarterback led them most of the season and through the playoffs to win the big game. So that's the most important position on the field.
Sure.
It's also very easy when you're in that desperation mode to kind of go, man, we really like this guy. Oh, we can really do something with him. That's also a factor that gets played into it. So I think it is possible. I know that they've been having discussions with the Falcons about making a move for Kirk Cousins. That doesn't excite anybody. But Kirk Cousins paired with a younger quarterback, perhaps, that she took second overall, that might, it'd be a little bit more exciting. Yeah, it might be a little. Yeah. It's a lot better than having a rookie quarterback in Kenny Pickett, on the roster.
Right.
So I think it's possible. It would be very difficult. You're probably going to need one more veteran like a Cousins. I'm not buying the Dak Prescott talk that's been going on the last couple of days. No. I do think the Cowboys are toying around with the idea of shipping him. I don't think that there's a trade that's imminent, though. I don't think that anybody's realistically looking at it because of the cap number that Dak is taking. It's a $60 to $70 million hit on your salary cap, depending on.
We already have one. We already have one of those.
Exactly. Exactly. Not in Cleveland. So, right. That's kind of the situation that you're in with Shedeur. You really should have a veteran guy there. If you
Yeah.
can find a way to make Cousins work, maybe
Yeah.
you go ahead and do that. Again, that's going to be money too. That's not going to be cheap either. Um, I think he's owed 40 this year and then has another 20 on the options after that.
Yeah.
So there's not a cheap, easy fix to this.
I like to let Jimmy Haslam worry about the money, John. I think that's his job. Uh, they always tend to figure out a way to pay the money somehow, right?
But and they seem to.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, though, let's just assume that the Browns take Shedeur number 2. If Kevin Stefanski is on the hot seat, what has to happen this year for him to save his job? I mean, he won 11 games in 23 with 5 quarterbacks. He won 3 games last year with 4. I think the odds of us playing, less than 3 quarterbacks this year is probably pretty remote. So what does that have to look like, you think, in the rookie year of a highly drafted quarterback, for the owner to say, yeah, nice job, let's run it back again?
I think a 2 or 3 game improvement from last year would probably help. So 6, 7, really 8 wins is would probably do it.
Okay.
That's a tough division right now.
Yeah.
You've got the Ravens, and the Ravens are absolutely juggernauts. You got the Bengals, and anytime Burrows is involved in the game, that's going to be a tough one. And then Pittsburgh, they're kind of in a weird spot too. Like, their quarterback situation is somehow worse than yours. Which is mind-boggling.
They always figure out a way to win ugly games. So
and they'll win 8 or 9 games anyway.
Their defense, they've been consistent. Mike Tomlin's never missed the playoffs. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
So that right there is 6 games out of your schedule that are going to be. You've got to find a way to get 2. Yeah. That's difficult.
Okay.
8 would probably do it. 7, 6, we're talking about it.
It depends how many games how many games the rookie starts, probably too.
That too. And does he show promise? That's going to be the other thing as well, because that would speak volumes. Say, okay, well, at least the scouts did their job. He looks like he's going to get a lot better next year. So it's there's got to be a promise factor in there as well. Yeah. But the Ravens aren't slowing down anytime soon. If the Bengals can put together any semblance of a defense, they're not going to be slowing down. And Pittsburgh is going to be bringing it. So I always like to look at it from that aspect of just the division outlook, because that gives you a really good idea of where you're going to be standing based on historical precedent, unless you just have an incredible division like the NFC North had last year. You can typically figure out about where you're going to place based on how you play in the division.
I think we've played pretty well in our division the last few years. We haven't necessarily won enough games, but we've been competitive with the Bengals. We beat the Ravens once this year. I think firing Ken Dorsey by itself is probably worth 2 wins.
Just gotta be.
Just going back to an offense that has a chance, right? So I'm just not grasping how taking Shedeur Sanders, other than sort of appeasing the fans with an idea that, okay, your quarterback's coming. How does that make us better this year?
Oh, trust me, I don't think it does.
Yeah.
I think you can sell it, though, to an owner that you're getting better because you have a young guy, right? And that's what I'm saying. If you pull 6, 7 wins out this year, that's a lot easier to sell.
You're saying it lets the coach get by. It lets the coach get by with less wins, essentially.
Right.
What you're saying, John.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you bring in like a Kirk Cousins, Kirk's played a long time in the league, typically with a winning team. Obviously he had the rough go there in Atlanta this year. There are a lot of different factors into that. But with Washington, he won football games, which is an accomplishment within itself, especially during the Dan Snyder era. And then you've got, him in Minnesota winning football games. So that would be an option where, okay, if you've got a quarterback, he's won games before, you couldn't protect him, you couldn't figure out a scheme that worked for him, whatever, you're fired. Whereas with the young guy, it's a little bit easier because, hey, those first 5, 6, 7 games, he's still a deer in the headlights behind the line of scrimmage. So once you settle in and you think about like Justin Fields, that last year he was in Chicago, he showed enough promise to walk into Pittsburgh, and granted that was a situation, but he played well and he had earned that starting job. They didn't go with another guy, or bring anybody in to compete with him. So that does speak a lot of volumes, when you've got a young guy that plays well toward the end of the year.
Yeah, Justin Fields got a great job. Okay, guys, we'll be right back with more of the Browns Blitz after these messages. Hey, welcome back with John Draft Vogel and more of the Browns Blitz. Let's see, John, I know you say you don't really have any favorite quarterbacks in this class. Who are maybe some of your favorite players in this class? Could be anybody. I was going to say maybe guys that not everybody knows, but it could be anybody.
No, we
who are
could
some
go.
of the guys you really like?
We could go with some guys that maybe not everybody knows. I think one of my favorite player, actually my favorite player in this class, would be, he's an edge rusher out of Central Arkansas, David Walker, and I think he's probably going to go in that 3rd to 4th round window. Maybe as a comp pick in the 3rd, one of the early picks in the 4th. He's a blast to watch. The one thing about him, the reason you're not going to see him go that high, is it's not just because he played at Central Arkansas. He's a lot smaller of a defender. He's about 6 foot, 270 pounds, but he's massively productive when he was at Central Arkansas, and then went down to the Senior Bowl and had a really fantastic week there. I like him because he's a run defender, and then also because as a pass rusher, he has a lot of natural bend and leverage because he's so much smaller than most of the tackles he's going up against, and he's quick enough to utilize that. So I like watching him. I think that he's gonna surprise a lot of people as an edge rusher in some rotation somewhere almost immediately. I really also like Jackson Slater. He's a guard at a Sacramento State. Got onto him back in the spring of last year. Just an aggressive-minded right guard type player. A guy that it looks like you could probably, in a pinch, plug him and play him this year. He's right there in the 6'3", 305 range. Tested really well at the combine and then at his pro day. But he's also it's just, I love his aggressive approach to playing the position. He doesn't set back into an anchor. He's always attacking, even in pass protection. And he'll disrupt people's first move. He did it all week at the Senior Bowl. Some really good defensive linemen down there too. Just, they couldn't figure him out. Everybody I've talked to that's coached against him or played against him, they've had nothing but good things to say about how difficult he is to deal with. And I think that he's going to kind of be that what was that guy, Quinn Miners? He's going to be that type of a player in this class. He's a lot of fun to watch.
Nice. So I've got one more thing. Then Jeff's going to probably have some questions for you. I'm not sure which other positions specifically we want to tackle with you. So I'm going to turn that over to Jeff. But my question is, the Browns pretty much have holes everywhere. Okay. They do.
It feels like it.
I could see him drafting, a couple of offensive linemen, a tight end, a couple of running backs, potentially 2 quarterbacks as the roster sits right now, maybe a corner or safety, potentially defensive lineman, you name it. So with this class and the picks, some of the picks the Browns have, what do you feel is the best use of their draft capital? Because it feels like no matter how you work this, you take the quarterback first, you want to use that 33rd pick so many different ways. And without looking at trades and accumulating more picks and everything. What kind of what jumps out at you as potentially, depending on how the draft falls, as maybe the best way to use that capital to fill some of the needs?
Yeah, I think it's this draft is going to be so unpredictable through that back end of the first round. You can see a bunch of receivers come off the board. You can see a bunch of linemen come off the board, both sides of the ball. You might even see a couple running backs in there. And then you've got people talking about taking quarterbacks in the end of the first round. The Rams might get into the mix. You hope for that. You'd love for that to happen.
Yeah.
Because that pushes another player down to you.
Mhm.
It's tough. I think because of the way that the class has shaken out, I would look at one or two positions in the top end of the first round. That'd be the defensive line, particularly defensive tackle. I think that there might be one guy or two guys there that would be ready to roll and get involved in that rotation. And then I would look at wide receiver. And that just, again, it depends on how the board falls. That back end of the first round,
Yeah.
your guess is really as good as mine. Who takes who? It's going to be that crazy. So I think you're looking at a receiver potentially, maybe a Minor out of Stanford, who could be a really good, possession type guy, try to complement Jerry Jeudy a little bit and let Jeudy kind of work the intermediate to deeper areas a little more often. Maybe you get, I'm trying to think of another receiver in that range. I don't think a Buka gets there. You're maybe a Trey Harris. Maybe you want to jump on a tight end because it's going to be a really good tight end class. And I think you'll see two off the board in the first round. Maybe that's the way that you want to go. Yeah, it really just depends where the run starts. There's always going to be a run on wide receivers at some point. There's going to be a run on defensive linemen at some point. So depending on how that goes, that's where you want to go the opposite way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jeff is going to dance a jig when they draft tight end. Because he's been looking for him to draft a tight end for a few years, and
I would take a serious look at Mason Taylor in the second round. I think that the two that are going to be off the board will be Warren out of Penn State. He might find his way into the top 10, but I don't think he gets out of the top 15.
Yeah,
and then Loveland out of Michigan. He'll be the guy. Both of them should be off the board. So I would look at a Mason Taylor. I might take a look at Gunnar Helm out of Texas. He ran a 4.8 40 at the combine with an absolutely destroyed ankle, essentially.
Yeah.
So he can absolutely. He's a good athlete. Plays really well. To the quarterback, him and Quinn Ewers had a really great chemistry last year. But both of those guys can work the underneath a little bit more and maybe try to get Joku down the field a little bit.
Yeah, so that's one of the areas that I had listed as I'm going to call them needs. I mean, if you look at our roster today, Rod's right. We could take somebody just about anywhere. But I see some glaring holes right now. And Andrew Berry is historically, he's been on the record as saying that the draft is not about this season. It's about future seasons, right? He's not trying to plug holes on this year's roster. But I don't see how we can not do that this year. We just don't have the cap space to go out and spend freely on free agents. There aren't great quarterback options out there. So I almost think that we have to rely on those first couple of picks at least to satisfy some of these really pressing needs, right?
Yeah.
And to me, there's the most pressing ones right now as I look at the roster, and not in any particular order, but free safety, I think, is a really big need for us right now. It's been a big need for us for years. We've not gotten great free safety play in a long time. Left tackle, obviously. I think with some of the guys that We've brought in depth pieces on the line that's mitigated that a little bit, but I'd still like to see us take a left tackle high this year. That could step in next year when those guys are, off their 1-year deals. We're obviously very, very thin at running back as well. I mean, tight end, we've got a bunch of bodies in that room beyond David Njoku, but we really don't have a number 2. And running backs, boy, it's pretty scarce. It's like hen's teeth right now. So I'd like to see us
pretty much one guy.
What's that? Yeah, pretty
much Jerome Ford. I mean,
Jerome Ford, yeah. So I think we've got a solid number 2 running back, right? But not necessarily a third down back. So if you try to prioritize those guys and plug them into different slots in the draft, I mean, obviously, if you throw out the number 2 pick and just assume that you've got 33 and 67 and 94 to play with, okay, how do you find guys that fill those holes at those spots? And again, not assuming we don't trade up or down or whatever. I think there's an awful lot of meat there this year. I think you said earlier that depth-wise, there's a lot of great players in that first 100, right? We should be able to find guys with those picks that can step in and play. You agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you need a safety in day 2, it's a really good class for that. If you need a running back at all, it's an awesome class for that. This is one of the deepest running back classes we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And if you need a tight end, I mean, it's a really good class for that too. Offensive tackle is a little bit crazier, and that's why you saw the market move so much for him this year. I mean, Dan Moore went down to Tennessee and got 25, 26 a year. So that wasn't because of Dan Moore's playing ability. That was because of the scarcity at the offensive tackle position that's going to be available.
Bless his heart. Yeah.
Most of these guys that you're looking at, especially when you get past Will Campbell and Membo out of Missouri, are really, they got questions, and maybe they're not tackles, maybe they're guards. Kelvin Banks, probably more of a guard than a tackle.
Yeah.
Josh Simmons, does the guy want to play football? Nobody knows. Those you have these concerns with those guys that start to fall into place. Now, if he's still there on the board, one guy that I might look at 33, because tackle is going to be the most important position. Especially the young quarterback at left tackle, oh my God, take care of that.
Yeah.
Arante Arise out of Minnesota would be a guy that I would look at there. He might slide up in the first round, but if he's there, that'd be a guy that I'd look at taking. I might come back at the beginning of the third round, and if Xavier Watts is still there, or Andrew Mukubu, those guys could be potential good free safeties. Watts, because he's more of a ball hawk. I think he had 7 interceptions at Notre Dame last year. Mukuba just shows up on the field. He's in the right spot, the right place, the right time. So instincts. Both of those guys are not going to go before like a Malachi Starks or a Nick Emanwari, because they're not as solid tacklers as those two are. That's not to say they can't do it. It's just saying they're not as solid at it. They bring a lot more with their instincts, though. So those would be a couple guys I would look there. And then, with the comp pick in the third, I might look at a guy like, or the Buffalo pick, excuse me. It's practically a comp pick at that point. That's where I might address the running back position for the first time, depending on the board. You're at that point, you're probably not going to get a number 1, but you're going to get another guy that you can add to the rotation and kind of offset the number 1. At that point, maybe a guy that's going to bring some pass catching ability and receiving ability, like Woody Marks out of USC, might be a guy that I look at there. I really like Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech. I think that he's probably there at that point, and he's going to be a Tajay Spears type, but a little bit bigger, a little bit stouter. And then I think who else could be there? Man, the The steal of the draft would be if Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee got that far. Uh, he's a 4.4 guy with speed. At the University of Tennessee, they run that quick tempo offense. So they'll get 6 snaps in, and he's still a nuisance in between the tackles, 5, 6 quick plays in a row. He's got incredible contact balance. So those would be some of the guys that I'd be looking at. That's probably how I would address that. And then come back knowing that, hey, when we get into the 4th round with 104, this is probably where I want to look at my tight end and see who's still on the board at that point.
Right. Yeah.
I kind of feel like this running back class, that when anybody's watching this draft, when a running back's taken and it's on another team, they're going to go, damn. And when a running back's taken for their team, they're going to go, yes. And it's pretty much going to be regardless of the back.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. That's the thing. There's a lot of them that are going to be really good pretty much right away. Genty is going to be a freak wherever he goes out of Boise State. I think Amarian Hampton, we might look back in 5 years and be like, he was the best guy in this class out of North Carolina. He's kind of that DeMarco Murray type running back. Really fun to watch. A little bit faster than Murray was. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, the Ohio State kids. Both of them are absolutely freaks in the load to deal with. And that's not even talking about when you get into the next tier of the guys, which are still great. DJ Gibbons out of Kansas State. You know, we mentioned Marks and Brooks out of Texas Tech. There's Brashard Smith out of SMU, who's going to be a running back wide receiver. There's a lot of them. And the class just gets better and better. You know, the deeper that you go, you don't run out of talent. There's going to be guys that are going to be high priority free agents that'll be making impacts next year.
That's cool.
So the league seems to be coming back around to running the football.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that will correlate to higher valuations for running backs in the draft?
No, I don't think it does. People are coming back to running the football because 90% of base defense now is nickel.
Yeah.
Linebackers have gotten smaller to play pass coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's why we're going back to running the football. It's the constant, you know,
give and take
pendulum effect, right?
Yep.
Seesaw. So, you know, everybody got into the pass things. Now everybody can throw the ball. Now the teams that are running the ball are really good, you know, because that's what defenses aren't built to stop.
Yeah.
So it's not going to add a lot though to the running back value. And the reason is let's go back and do a little history refresher, go back 40, 50 years in the NFL. You look at some of these vicious defenders back in the day, it's 70s and 80s. The purple people eaters. The average purple people eater was like 6'1", 260 pounds. That's maybe a defensive end today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence Taylor was the greatest freak known, you know, to defense back when he played. He was 6'2", 235 pounds. We wouldn't know what to do with him today.
Yeah.
You know,
small guys now. Yeah. Small linebacker now.
The average defensive lineman in 2000 was about 280 pounds, 6'1", 6'2", 280 pounds. Now they're 6'3", 300 pounds.
Right.
So the evolution has been defenders are getting bigger and they're more athletic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot more wear and tear on a running back's body because the average running back size has not grown with a defender. Emmitt Smith was 5'11", 215. That's what a lot of these guys are coming out this year in this class. So their body type hasn't changed. The defenders have. So that's put a lot more of a load on the running back's body. You just don't expect them to handle the workload of being a running back anymore for that long. So that's why you see people trying to split up the carries. And then you also have to factor in just a little bit of basic economics, which is supply and demand. There's only so much demand in the league for running backs. Nowadays, people are usually 4 or 5 running backs deep on their roster, on their active game day, not their active game day, but their active roster. 2 or 3 of those guys are expendable.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got those guys being replaced every year coming up in the next class. So from a cost-effective standpoint, it's a lot easier to let the veteran guy go because he wants $6 million and draft the guy that you're going to pay 3. So I don't think I think you'll still see those guys like Saquon Barkley, like Derrick Henry. Those guys are still going to continue to get paid, but it's not going to increase the value overall of the position.
Makes sense. Bodes well for us to get a good running back later in the draft.
There are plenty in this class, right? There are plenty. You could, in theory, I wouldn't do it, but in theory, you could wait till the 6th round and probably still come away with somebody who's going to be an impact player day 1.
Yeah. It's encouraging. I think with the signing of Cornelius Lucas, it took some of the pressure off of the left tackle spot. But I still think the Browns need to find someone again to start in 26 over there. Yeah. It almost feels to me like we have to find that guy at 33.
And that's why you're going to hope that Arcega is there out of Minnesota. I think he'd be the best fit. He'd be the best opportunity, especially if you didn't have to play him right away.
Yeah.
One of the things that the Browns typically like based on the trends is the offensive tackle position. They're very picky about. They got to be 6'4", really 6'5", ideally, 300 pounds and 33-inch arms. Arcega hits all those marks. And I guess you could take a swing. There seems to be a lot of interest as we get closer to the draft, kind of building in like a Wyatt Millum out of West Virginia. He might work his way up into the bottom end of the 2nd round. And then Caleb Etienne out of BYU. Both of those guys are massive left tackle types as well. Yeah. So there are options. I think that Ronte Arcega is probably your best shot. But Millum would work. Pittsburgh's taking a good look at him, if that tells you anything. I don't know if you trust their scouts anymore. But Millum and Etienne are also there.
Yeah. So,
we've got about 5 minutes left or so, Rod. Do you want to do a quick game?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I hope you'll get a kick out of this, John. This segment we're going to call Who Said It? And I'm going to start out with, I think, a pretty easy one. Quote, I want to wreck this league together. Who said it?
Rod, you got any idea on that one? I'm blanking. It might be a little late for me.
This league together.
I want to wreck this league together. I'll give you a clue. A homeless man recommended that we draft him.
Malik Willis?
I didn't think this would be this hard.
Oh, Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I want to. That was when they called him up and said, "How do you feel like? How would you feel about playing for the Browns? I want to wreck this league together." Well, he wrecked something. All right,
hard, maybe.
that was fun, huh? Number 2. So you guys will like this one. Make sure when anyone tackles you, he remembers how much it hurts.
Oh, I've heard this before. I gotta remember who this was, though. Wasn't Jamal Lewis, was it?
but you're on the right track.
I was thinking it's got to be a big bruising running back.
Yeah. Let's just say one of the best.
Jim Brown.
Yes, it was Jim Brown that said
Ah,
that.
Okay.
oh man, yes, of course.
This is a Browns podcast, John.
Hey, I was on the right track. Jamal Lewis did play.
Right, he was here.
I just had to go back another 40 years.
Right.
Right.
Once we get the pattern down, it's a little bit easier.
Yep. All right. Number 3. The future ain't what it used to be. Now you got to go a little bit outside the box on this one. I thought this was appropriate.
Back to the Future?
As we're talking about Jim Brown and us drafting running backs. The future ain't what it used to be.
Mm.
I'll just give you this one. This was.
Yeah, you don't have to.
This is a Yogi Berra-ism. Kind of famous for his contradictory quotes.
That makes sense.
All right, number 4 and second. I've only got 2 more. Okay, number 4. Humility is something I've always prided myself on.
Humility.
And Dave Chappelle. No, I'm just kidding.
Man, I don't know about this segment, Jeff.
This is a little too hard. I didn't expect it to be this hard.
Humility.
Right.
Well, it's easier when you have the answers.
I'm going to start throwing some clues out. This is one of Cleveland's favorite sons.
It's got to be. Is it Bernie?
Bernie Kosar, correct.
Okay. First guess. Okay.
All right. We're finally to the last one.
Wait, let me just put a guess out before you say it.
Okay.
Joe Thomas.
I thought about looking one up from Joe, but I did not, Rod.
Joe.
And when I did these, I was thinking that we were going to somehow be able to throw graphics up, like boo hiss or yay or something like that, because some of these guys.
This is my first time running this thing, Jeff. I mean, give me a little warning.
Credit, but these guys definitely elicit different emotions from the fans. Okay, so the last one was, I had to do what I had to do to keep my family alive, period.
You have a guess, John?
This is a movie quote.
Oh, is it a movie quote? Okay.
Is it not?
The guy.
Sounded like maybe The Taken. Liam Neeson.
William Neeson. Yeah. I would say it sounds like something maybe OBJ would say.
Yeah, you're in the right track, Rod. It's a guy who was really a villain in Cleveland.
Shoot.
It's not Baker Mayfield, is it?
No.
Okay.
No more guesses?
I was trying to think of the wide receiver who signed for the big bucks, but that's not him. It's
I had to do what I had to do to keep my family alive, period.
Big money.
Arthur P. as in prick Modell.
Oh.
Points off for mentioning his name on the podcast, John.
Oh, man. Had to go there. Oh.
Wow.
Well, that was a fun segment, huh?
It was. Yeah. Nice work. Nice
You're gonna have to put together a book now, and then we'll just reference the book next time. That's what we gotta do. Hey, how quickly can you find it in the book?
Right.
Yeah.
The internet's a wonderful gift.
Definitely.
Beautiful.
So
beautiful.
Well, John, we appreciate you joining us tonight, and we always give everybody a chance to close with some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to mention about your work?
I think it'll speak for itself if you take a look into it. Um, I think if my best friend, half my life, he's from Columbus, uh, huge Browns fan, and yeah, so I understand to some eh, level of I'm at least familiar, I guess, is what I mean with had the pain that Browns fans experience year after year. Um, I think there is a chance that you can get through this class with a solid draft. It's going to depend how the board falls. It always comes down to that. But I think there's a good chance you can come out of this pretty solid with some good pieces in place and hopefully put together a little bit better of a season.
And maybe start to turn some things around.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds
okay,
good.
Jeff, closing words?
Yeah, it's been great, John. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's always fun talking about the draft. I one thing came to mind. I hope after us doing this tonight, I've been squinting like crazy to try to see this tiny little box that you're in on my computer screen. I'm gonna have to figure out how to blow this up next week, but I hope your draft guide comes in a large print edition for me.
Hey, it's fully customizable, okay? You
Awesome.
set that thing however
Perfect.
you'd like.
I appreciate that. All right, man. Thanks a lot.
That's awesome. All right. This has been the Browns Blitz. We thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.